Welcome to episode 482 of Salcedo Paranormal, and tonight I am continuing my review of the complete books of Charles Fort. As always, you can find all episodes of the show along with links to social media and other ways to contact me at the podcast page, and that is salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions or stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or from others that you trust. Happy to either read those or have you join me on the show to talk about them. Thank you all for listening, whether you are here for the live recording streams on Discord, or if you listen on the podcast or YouTube feeds, or on the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. There you can hear replays of 2 episodes of the show every night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right before Troubled Minds Radio comes on. And that's at, of course, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. As always, I want to thank Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio, as well as Liam Martin, host of the Eggs on Minds podcast, for producing the shows and putting them up on the station. If you'd like to support the show, there are some different ways to do that. You can always share the show with others and rate and review the show on your podcast platform of choice. Also, I've written some paranormal fiction and nonfiction books you can check out on Amazon. I also have a Patreon page where I'll put up content whenever I can, and I have 1 episode up there already, and that is available to all membership tier levels there. Also, if you'd like to make just a one-time donation, you can do that through PayPal and Venmo. And help is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making these shows, from equipment to research materials to travel expenses. I'm going to be at the Mid-Michigan Paracon this November 4th and 5th. That's a Saturday and Sunday in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, at the Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. I will be there just to check it out, to be at a Paracon for the first time, and making recordings of myself and anyone else who wants to join me, audio recordings, talking about the paranormal and thoughts and experiences for anyone that wants to share those. So looking forward to that, and of course, all those recordings, when I bring them back home, I will share those on future shows. So I think that covers everything there. Again, the plan is for tomorrow night to have a very special guest on the show, returning guest, and that will be amazing. Looking forward to that. And then I'll have 1 day off, and then shows will start back up on Saturday. As I said before, I will be doing shows 6 days a week from now until Halloween. So looking forward to that. And then, of course, once I get back from that Paracon, I'll be taking a few days off, basically, after all that. So that's the plan as of now. Hopefully everything goes according to that plan. We'll see how it goes. So as I said before, with this book I'm reviewing, here and there I will skip sections when they are they don't make a ton of sense to me. Probably usually because it's more discussion of scientific thoughts and theories and all those different things. But I don't have a lot that I'm going to be skipping this time. Just like one section, and this is all summaries that were made using AI, taking basically having the AI read in a way this book, sections of this book, and I'll be reading those summaries and commenting on them as I go. So that's what I've been doing for this book for a while, this collection of books, really. And we're on the second of the 4 books in that collection, and that is New Lands. And so this is going to take a while to get through this whole series, but that's okay. There's always more to review after that of other things. But let me get to the file here, and we'll get started. So we're starting in, again, New Lands. This is part 2, chapter 18. So in this section, Fort talks about many reports over the years of phantom soldiers or armies seen in the sky in places like Scotland, Liverpool, France, India, and Germany. The sightings often involved large groups of people. I'm wondering if he means large groups of people as in witnesses, or just I'm guessing that's what he means. But mentions that the conventional explanations were that these were mirages or optical illusions and of actual terrestrial soldiers. However, Fort found these explanations unconvincing, wondering how images could be so selective in only showing soldiers over and over in different places. Fort suggests these could be visions of inhabitants and activities in extrageographic conditions. For example, unknown lands and realms in our space that were temporarily visible. He saw them as glimpses of these lands and life forms that are normally invisible to us on Earth. And the amazing thing about that is you can sort of take that and say, well, does he mean ghosts or spirits? And I think that's a possibility, but I also don't think that's the only possibility. Anyway, getting back to the material here, this says the mixture of things seen, like soldiers, along with animals like lions and swans, further convinced Fort that these were visions of life in other realms beyond just mirages of earthly scenes. And I wonder if any of these appeared to be solid or not, if they appear to be translucent. If any of these were solid, that reminds me what am I saying? Of the apparitions people have seen in physical looking, as in not transparent, not translucent, appearing to be physical. Appearances and sightings of creatures like pterodactyls or flying dinosaurs in the air. I wonder if that's similar or part of the same thing or something sort of along those lines. Makes me wonder about that. So let me see here. So Fort sees these repeated sightings of phantom soldiers and armies in the sky as potential evidence, again, of normally invisible entities. And so that's the end of that section there. So again, I mentioned I'd be skipping some things here and there. We're going to skip chapter 19, move on to chapter 20. And this one also doesn't have a whole lot in here I'm going to talk about, but it does mention various astronomical observations of unusual lights, shapes, and changes on the lunar surface in the 1860s as possible evidence of lunar inhabitants trying to communicate with Earth. And just think about that in a way, because that's a good, almost 100 years before any kind of manned missions took place. I mean, at the very least, a good 50, 75. So really is amazing to think about that possibility. Of course, I would guess people might say, well, that's just other lights. Basically, if they're lights, then they can be explained away. But I always wonder if with these things, if maybe just because there's a more logical explanation, how do we know for sure that that is the actual explanation for all these things? Moving on to chapter 21. This section discusses observation of lights, flashes, and other luminous phenomena seen in the skies in the 1870s and 1880s around the times of oppositions of Mars and Venus. So Charles Fort suggests that these sites could be related to these planets through Conventional explanations. Oh, I'm sorry. Though conventional explanations at the time attributed them to meteors or fire balloons. Huh. Never heard that term before. Fort seems skeptical, of course, as usual. He includes reported observations from various locations like Indiana, New York, so that's in the U.S., Scotland, Belgium, among others, to show that these events were witnessed in separate places. So, of course, Fort is questioning astronomy and their conventional explanations for all these things. So, let me see here. And he also believes, based on these reports, that there could be life on Mars communicating with or visiting Earth. And of course, we've had a lot of images so far over the years of Mars and all that, and that's a whole other, I think, conversation there. Moving on to chapter 22. This one talks about various mysterious events like explosions, earthquakes, and falls, as in basically objects falling from the sky, mysterious substances falling from the sky. He speculates that these could be related to extraterrestrial activity, perhaps from Mars. Fort documents loud explosions and tremors felt in various locations in England, India, and other places in the 1800s with no obvious geological explanation. He mentions coincidences between some of these events and the opposition of Mars when Mars is aligned with the Earth and the sun. Let me see here. Fort points out that triangles are clusters of locations where strange events seem to be concentrated, like the London Triangle in England. I wonder if he also would think of the Bermuda Triangle in that same way. Let's see here. He mentions unusual substances like black rain or hail that fell after some of these tremors and explosions. Fort speculates that debris from explosions high in the atmosphere could have caused this. So basically, something in the sky exploded and then sent down this black material as rain or let me see here, rain or hail. And Fort suggests that all these could be related to intelligent extraterrestrial activity, though he doesn't have definitive evidence. He sees patterns that make him suspect there is an underlying connection between these different events. So that's amazing stuff right there. The idea of these objects in the sky that aren't seen all the time, but then you have these explosions and then things fall down from the sky. So let me move on to the next section here, but I'll check on chat. So this is an amazing book, just talking about all the different things people have seen coming down from the sky and just out in space before there was any kind of known space activity from people. It just really always amazes me that these things apparently were happening. So getting back to the file here and back to chapter 23. This section describes a series of unusual light phenomena observed on the moon from 1875 to 1886, mostly around the times of opposition of Mars. Talks about in July of 1875, officers of a British ship, that's hard to say, saw luminous projections from the moon's limb around the time of Mars opposition. In February of 1877, an astronomer saw a fine line of light across the lunar crater Eudoxus. Eudoxus. I'm not sure how you say that, but basically a crater on the moon. In March of 1877, there was a bright illumination that was seen in another crater on the moon. Let's see. Also in May of 1877, changes were seen in the lunar crater Lynn. I'm not sure about that for sure. I don't know that for sure. Around the time of Mars opposition. In June of that same year, moving lights and illuminations were reported on the dark part of the moon by multiple observers. That's amazing in a way. In August of 1877, that same year, during a lunar eclipse, a large ball of fire was seen dropping through the clouds. I wonder where it landed. That's amazing. Also terrifying, depending on where it landed. There have also been flashing lights, misty glows, and other transient events, basically moving events, continue to be reported in craters across the moon from 1879 to 1886, sometimes around Mars oppositions. So this chapter seems to suggest a connection between unusual lunar events and the oppositions to of Mars. So and that's a position basically from what I'm gathering here. The reported lights and mists, especially in craters on the northwest quadrant of the moon, are described as anomalous and unexplained. So, and this section highlights a period of increased lunar activity from the mid-1870s to mid-1880s. So, moving on to the next section here. I think we have time for at least a couple more. And so this is chapter 24. This chapter describes a series of unusual mirages or atmospheric phenomena that were seen over Sweden and parts of the Baltic region between 1881 and 1888, including visions of islands, forests, cities, and warships and other objects. I have heard of mirages before, of things that were created by different positioning of lights and sunsets and different things. So I don't know how much of that is actually anomalous, but this is, again, keep in mind, this is going back to the early 1900s when all this was recorded here. Charles Fort suggests that these could be mirages of real places. So yeah, basically what I was just talking about there. But they're confined to a specific time period rather than being ongoing. So he wonders if they may be shadows or mirages from something that was in temporary suspension over the Baltic and their Baltic region and Sweden. So that's a good point there. I wonder about that as well. He talks about how this only happened in these areas during this certain time, and he wonders about what that means. So Fort gives examples of other strange sightings, like an unknown round object seen near the sun during an eclipse in 1887, and theorizes it must have been suspended in the air rather than being close by. That's odd, though, because there have been reports over the years since then of, and I mean, I think even images. Of course, I haven't looked at those because I'm not the best at seeing pictures, but basically UFOs seen moving around and in and out of the sun. So I wonder if there's a connection there. Fort discusses stones called Banjite. I'm not sure about that. Banjite, that fell from the sky in Serbia in 1872 and 1889, which he sees as evidence of explosions in the sky that impacted the Earth. And let's see here. Charles Fort continues on. He cites examples of earthquakes that may have actually been reactions to meteoric explosions in the sky rather than underground causes. So that's the end of that section there. That really is amazing. That the thing with the objects near the sun, that is the part there that's sticking in my mind because of, like I said, reports of objects seen almost to the present day going around and in and out of the sun. So moving on to chapter 25. This one says, or talks about, let's see here, it's questioning mainstream science. Okay, so Fort cites various astronomical evidence against the distance between planets and stars and the motion of the Earth, such as exploding celestial objects seen from two different locations on Earth, or meteors that seem to originate from a fixed point. Okay, this is getting into stuff I'm not processing very well. But so I think we're just going to skip the rest of that section. Definitely, if you want to check out the books, you can find them on Amazon and read them all for yourselves if you want every little detail. But there's a lot of material there to go through. So we're gonna skip through the rest of that section there. Move on to chapter 26. In this section, Fort discusses reports of luminous objects appearing near planets like Venus and Saturn. This challenges the notion that Earth is stationary. Of course, now that's sort of an idea that is not so much there anymore, implying that objects are able to move between planets. Well, that seems to make sense in a way. There are reports of unknown luminous objects appearing in local skies over places like England, South Africa, and Ohio in the U.S. Fort suggests these may be exploratory vessels visiting from elsewhere. And let's see here. Fort argues that if Earth moves, I guess getting into more numbers here. So basically just going into facts and figures here. So let's see where the rest of this goes. I think that's where we're going to end that. The rest of that, like I said, is getting into scientific theories and math and all those kinds of things I'm really not that good at. So, and we're just about out of time anyway. So I think that's where we'll end that for today. And we have about, let's see here, 12 more chapters in this book. And again, there will be 2 more books after this that I'll be reviewing. I just want to mention again, if you ever go back and listen to previous episodes of the show, please check out the links to guest projects that are on the show for various episodes, and see what they're up to, and support them as well. And don't forget to listen to the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting, for my show as well as many others. So thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all in the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care.